This Australian Grand Prix episode is brought to you by Australia's House of Powersports, A1 Accessory Imports, proud importer and distributor of Motorex oils and lubricants. From high-performance engine oils and gearbox oils to brake fluids, greases and protective sprays, Motorex has the perfect product for any job. So, if you're serious about top-tier performance and protection, you can count on Motorex to deliver. Visit motorexoil.com.au and find exactly what you need to keep your machine running at its best. Hello and welcome back to the OMG MotoGP podcast, or this episode, should I say. G'day mates, let's throw a shrimp on the barbie because MotoGP heads to Phillip Island. For me, not being biased, but the best weekend of the year. I had to get it in there before I introduce the man sitting alongside me, Mr. Keith Ewan. Keith, you've got a big cheesy grin on your face.
Well, yeah, it's because it's the trouble is, I remember the first time I went to Phillip Island, I remember I packed a T-shirt and I think that was about it. And then I got there and froze to death for about 4 days because it's just not what you expect it to be when you get to Phillip Island. Fantastic racetrack. That is universal. Everybody across the board, riders, organisers, everybody loves the racetrack. Racetrack is brilliant. The weather at this time of the year can be awkward. I remember last year we had the sprint race was supposed to be on the Sunday and the main race was on the Saturday. In fact, I think that's the first time we've had a Saturday Grand Prix since Assen back in 2015, 14, something like that. So a Saturday race for that, and the sprint race was eventually cancelled. We never even got that away on the Sunday in the end. So there was no sprint race last time out. But it's like Snetterton in the UK in the winter. It is just a strange place to be. It's full of people that are really, really proper bike enthusiasts, campers on the side of a mountain when it's freezing cold. These hardy people are stood out there. I mean, they don't call one of the corners Siberia for no good reason. It is
Yes.
bloody freezing. But then again, if the sun comes out, it's the most beautiful place in the world. Obviously, the World Superbikes get it easy because they're on the calendar at a time of the year when it's really, really nice down there. The only other thing I'd say, if we're going to be on about Phillip Island for the minute, is you are in the state of Victoria, which is notorious for being awkward when it comes to rules. Can't cross the road here, can't walk over a white line there. So there's lots of people given orange jackets and stuff that love to enhance their immediate importance and wave and blow whistles at you and God knows what. So that's a bit annoying. But apart from that, the Aussies welcome you quite well. You've got to think about Phillip Island because it's a bit remote where it is. So before you go over the San Remo Bridge onto the island, there's a shopping precinct just to your left before you go there at San Remo. Get all your groceries done there. Get all your snacks. There's a big old shopping place there that you can get bits and pieces from. And if you fancy it, not that I'm biased to call it, of course, in any Thai way, but there's the Spicy Duck as well, which is a Thai restaurant that's in that parade too, which it feels like home from home for me. So I always end up eating in there. But it's a place you need to make a plan. It's about, an hour and a half, 2 hours. If you stick to the speed limit, and I would recommend you do stick to the speed limit because there's police cars everywhere and they do you for 5 kilometres an hour over the speed limit. There's no leeway. They just love it. They're lined up to get you. So you've got to stick to the speed limit there as well. And if that's the case, then you're nearly 2 hours out of Melbourne down to Phillip Island. It's a reasonable drive. But it's one you've got to do. Yeah, you can go and see the penguins if you want. Made for tourists. You're not allowed to get near them and all the rest of it. But anyway, you can sit there in a grandstand and watch the penguins come up the beach. Loads of wallabies bounding around everywhere. You wake up in the morning and they're outside the front of your hotel window or wherever you're stopping. Jonathan Ray, 6 times World Superbike champion. He's got a house there. I mean, Tasha, his wife, is from Phillip Island. Bit of useless information there, I suppose. So,
well, no, same thing with it's not motorbike related, but the Hemsworth brothers, Chris Hemsworth, Liam Hemsworth, the famous actors Thor, they're born and raised on Phillip Island, which is crazy considering, like you said, it's literally 2.5 hours south of Melbourne. And you think, actually, fun fact for you guys, Melbourne is the same distance to the equator as London is. So it makes sense as to why the weather is so bloody cold down there. But we always say pack for 4 seasons in one day because 1 minute it'll be sunny and beautiful and next minute it's raining and the rain is sideways and then it's windy and then it's sunny again. It is the craziest circuit, craziest location.
Well, we've had situations where if the wind is coming from the sea, it's freezing cold because it's coming from whatever the South Pole is down that end, Tasmania or whatever. But if it's blowing off the land, then it's 20 degrees warmer. And we've had situations. Cal Crutchlow was in for a podium at one stage, I seem to remember, and then all of a sudden, you felt it. You felt it in the commentary box. It suddenly went really cold, and the tyres that that they got at that particular time just didn't work when it got cold, and down people were going, front end crashes and the like, into Honda Corner or MG. Can't remember. They've renamed them all now, I think, as well. So other sponsors are involved.
Sorry, guys, if you can hear that in the background, someone's decided to do a burnout. So they're obviously excited for the Australian Grand Prix as well.
Good on them. You're obviously not in the state of Victoria.
Not yet. Well, let's touch on the circuit itself, because we know it's a super abrasive track, but you just mentioned tyres there. How do you think Michelin are going to go? Are they going to bring a lot of different options? How are the riders going to handle that?
Well, that is the thing. I mean, I feel sorry for the likes of Michelin and Co. back in the day. I mean, when they resurfaced that place, it was so incredibly different from how it had been in the past. And it depends on the weather, it depends on the temperature. We know that on every other racetrack. But there are nowhere that you go to that have got the extremes of difference. As you said, 4 seasons in one weekend. You are going to get 4 seasons in one weekend, and that's really difficult to get set up to work. I mean, last year, I mean, I actually printed off this morning because I couldn't remember the results last year, and then when I looked at them, Johann Zarco, race winner. Incredible. Bagnaia, second. Okay, that's fairly standard stuff. Digi, Binder, Jorge Martin, who was on pole last year, finished in 5th place. Marco Bezzecchi in 6th place. So Jack Miller. I mean, one of the things that poor old Jack, I mean, home Grand Prix, they are actually a nightmare, your home Grand Prix. You would think you look forward to your home Grand Prix. Of course you do. But your home Grand Prix, there's so much pressure. Your relatives come, your mates come, everybody and their dog comes to see you. You walk in Jack's case, he's going to walk in there and he's going to see the statue of Stoner, Doohan, and Gardner in the front entrance. Everybody getting their picture taken with it. There's some fantastic Aussie history from this region and from the country. If you think about it, in my era, Aussies and Americans were the ones that were ruling the world at the time, and it's been such a long time. So Jack will be under a bit of pressure. Will the KTM work for him this weekend? We'll find out. Certainly, if he conditions, then you would expect Jack to be somewhere in there anyway. But there's a lot of pressure on a home rider, and so he's got that to bear. Not that it's changed any. When Gardner did the business there, he was under the same pressure as any other Aussie at home. You got to do it. Fantastic. So I was looking up a bit of history. Mick Doohan, 54 Premier Class wins. The record of some of the Aussies. Casey, obviously, he's second in line. Casey for me is still one of the, if not the best rider I've ever seen riding a motorbike in the world. I mean, I'll get blasted for it, and I don't care, because I think Casey was an alien. He did stuff on that Ducati back in the day that no one else for years was able to manage. So good for him. And then Gardner, my old mate, he came over here when obviously me and him were against each other in the British Championship. So we know each other quite well, and we have had the occasional, should we say, gripping of lapels. I love Wade. Proper down to earth. I mean, he was one of those guys where on pure talent, he's not in the same league as Casey Stoner and Mick Doohan, perhaps, but on sheer determination, Wayne Gardner was the man. He got the biggest kahunas out of any of them. He would ride a garden gate, and he was in an era as well where the bikes were actually designed to kill you. In that era, what he was riding were just animals. So Gardner still gets my vote, as he would. And you got who was the first boat? I wrote it down. First Aussie winner of the Premier Class, 1953, even before my time. Ken Kavanagh.
Yeah.
Grand Prix winner. So Aussies have got a great history, and that pressure is all on Jack this week.
Well,
sorry, Jack.
This year marks the 30th anniversary since Mick Doohan won his world title as well. So I know that there's going to be big celebrations at Phillip Island for Mick, and obviously all the riders, because we've got Senna, We've got 2 in Moto3 with Jacob and Joel Kelso as well. So it's good to see Aussies across all the classes. But I wanted to talk and ask you about this circuit in particular. Looking at interviews and whatnot, I always hear the riders say, this is a real rider's track. What makes Phillip Island a real rider's track?
I think the flow in places, you've got hairpins there, but they're kind of not like hairpins. Yeah, well, they are, I suppose, but they're kind of passing places. They're kind of awkward. You've got options with them, whereas usually a hairpin, it's just a blast up the inside. But I mean, some of that stuff, right from the Southern Loop round through Siberia, the Hay Shed and up over the top, Lukey Heights. I mean, these are classic names of corners, etched on any motorbike racer's mind when they come to it, because it's got undulation. It's a demanding racetrack from a mindset point of view, I think. You've got to have your head around this place to make it work. And then you've got the tyre situation you've mentioned already. If you've not managed your tyres, and it is going to be an issue, and it may well be, that final corner, absolutely. I mean, I feel sorry for Michelin. It's like torture for a tyre, because you are spinning the rear wheel for God knows how long in high gears out onto the Gardner Straight. And it's like torture for a tyre. Its temperature is going from relatively low to absolutely off the scale on the edge of the tyre, and you're destroying it. So it's amazing these bits of rubber that are hanging under 300 horsepower actually stay together, I've got to say. And sometimes they don't. I mean, some of the classic shots that you've got coming out of that last turn, that last left-hander onto the Gardner Straight, sideways on with the thing drifting through. I mean, Gary McCoy used to be the boy talking about Aussies. McCoy, Speedway rider, of course. So, and it was a left-hander, so that would suit him perfectly. It's a spectacular racetrack, and I don't think anybody doesn't look forward to going there. But there's always an element of trepidation. Australia's a long way from home. Okay, they've come across from Japan now. Some guys came home. Obviously didn't make the trip straight away. I mean, I used to stay out. I'd stay out there for the Malaysia, Japan, Australia thing, because my wife hates me. So I'd stay away. It's not true, darling. So it's kind of one of them things where I used to love taking it all in, but some people get worn out by that. Some people have other things that they've got to do to get, being away from home for a long time. And that affects people as well. Luckily, you guys drive on the proper side of the road, so we know where we are with everything when we're half dead and driving to Phillip Island.
I just to touch back on the tires, because I was just thinking that when you were talking, World Superbikes in February had to do the pit stop like we saw in MotoGP. Was it 2013? Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, the one that Marquez got completely wrong.
I'm just wondering, and I guess if you've heard any more, because they resurfaced the track recently. So do you think we could possibly see something like that, or tire pressures, or a bit of excitement?
Well, yes, of course, we definitely could. We've seen it in the past. I think Michelin are quite sharp, and they will have surely got caught out on that situation. You would have thought, but shipping the amount of tyres you need to all the way down there is a big exercise. But I'm sure they will have got across it. Whether we'll have any problems, whether that's a load of work for nothing because it all goes smoothly, or because they haven't brought the right stuff, we'll find out when we get into it. But I suspect that you'll see, practice-wise nowadays, we used to call it qualifying for qualifying, didn't we? Every practice session meant that you needed to go as fast as you can to get through to the next stage. Whereas nowadays it's a bit less critical, and there's more actual practice, so you can do a long run on a tyre. But you still find people that haven't. Last time with the medium tyre, nobody had really put a lot of mileage on the medium tyre, so you weren't sure whether it was going to do the duty. I suspect that teams that are smart will put some mileage on their tyres. If we've got a dry situation early on, they'll be wanting to put some mileage on there just to see where it goes. And if one or two teams, of course, there'll be one or two teams that are concentrating on lap times and relying on other people to do the mileage so that Michelin can give them the feedback. There's always that opportunity to let other people do the heavy lifting when it comes to the long test. But we'll see.
This Australian Grand Prix episode is brought to you by Australia's House of Powersports, A1 Accessory Imports, the proud importer and distributor of Motion Pro specialty tools. Whether you're a professional mechanic or an enthusiast, Motion Pro builds specialty tools designed to make maintenance and repair tasks easier and faster. And A1 Accessory Imports is your go-to source for Motion Pro tools in Australia. Visit a1accessory.com.au and take your wrenching to the next level with Motion Pro. I think what I'm looking forward to this weekend, and I don't know whether you agree or not, but the fact that it does kind of feel like since Misano, the races have been a little bit autonomous. Yeah, we've had a crash or whatnot, but it's always Pecco, Jorge, Martin at the front. I think this weekend, because it is Phillip Island and looking at the weather, it's a lot of rain over the weekend. It could close that field back in. And then I'm wondering if we might see, because I feel like Phillip Island, like he says, that rider's track, everyone loves it. The rookies have been successful here. I think about Pecco when he first came into MotoGP, his rookie season, I think he was on the podium here. So maybe it might bring Pedro back up into the front. Could we see Marc Marquez battling if we are having a wet qualifying, closing those first front three rows?
Get your brother back out. He was good in the wet. Come on, Chris, get your leathers on.
I think he'd say he's too old now, but yeah, too slow.
Can't say that.
Wasn't it when you have kids, it's a second for every kid that you have? So
is that right?
I don't know. This is what I've heard, but
no wonder I'm so slow. I think it will be an unusual result, almost certainly. I mean, only got to look at last year. Zarco. Will Zarco be somewhere there again this year? Who knows? They need a result, that team. There's no doubt about it. And this is the kind of place with odd weather that you just might be able to get it sorted. Can't wait till we do our predictions, because I don't know what the bloody hell I'm going to predict for this weekend for sure. You've got real opportunity, as you say, for the slight under. This is why Miller rises to the occasion of home. Aussies rise to that occasion generally, if I generalise. So I can imagine Miller, providing he doesn't go bloody bend himself, trying so hard in qualifying. You still need to qualify reasonably well here. Although in Moto 3 that's always been. I mean, I think the best Moto 3, the best race I've ever seen was from here, Moto 3, 15 riders within a second or whatever it was at the flag. This place just is something a little bit special when everybody gets stuck in, and it seems to breed some kind of maniacal desire to be across that line even quicker than usual, which is great fun from a Moto 3 point of view. And Moto 2 as well. I mean, I think Moto 2, those triumphs work really well around here. Pirellis are working really well generally during the course of the year since we switched from Dunlops. So I think that, again, we're in for an interesting smaller class situation too. But they tend to get bullied a bit if the weather's a bit odd, and MotoGP obviously takes precedent. And we'll see how, again, like last year. I mean, the MotoGP race, the sprint race, was supposed to be run on the Sunday after Moto 2. But the weather turned, and there was no way you could actually run it. The only good thing, as far as if the weather's so bad at Phillip Island, there is such a small crowd there because it's not a big venue, that you can get out fairly easily, even though there's only one road out of the place. It's quite an easy place to get out of. If you've got a flight to catch, it's not too bad. But it's the other thing about the venue, if I might say, is that it is a little bit old school. And that is good and bad, but good in a greater measure, purely and simply because you can wander around, and it's on banks. You can walk around the outside of the track. You can go and have a look. The paddock atmosphere is fantastic at Phillip Island. In Italy, there's every man and his dog in the paddock, and you wonder how the hell they get passes, because trying to get passes, as you know, is really, really difficult to get a MotoGP paddock pass. But somehow in Italy, I think they print them on the gate and just give them away. But here, you get a lot of people here in Phillip Island as well, but it has a more kind of respectful, not kind of the argy-bargy, everybody pushing and shoving kind of a thing. It's got a better way about it, better manner in the paddock. I enjoy the atmosphere in Phillip Island. I just it's the weather that does it for me. You know I can't
Well,
stand the cold.
yeah. Like I said, 1 minute it's warm, one next minute it's 10 degrees colder because the sun's gone behind the clouds. But Keith, for our listeners who are heading there for the first time, where do you recommend or what corners do you recommend they go and watch? Because for me,
Well,
I'm always a Lukey Heights area. I love that.
Hayshed, Lukey Heights, Siberia, like these, you got Stoner's Corner, they call it Stoner's Corner purely simply because if you've never seen Casey Stoner go through a corner sideways on with everything lit up, then sometimes there's inappropriate named corners like Lorenzo Corner. Where's that? The last one at I can't remember now, bloody hell. But anyway, it's a hairpin where I think Valentino stuffed him up the slip road. So there are some, Pedrosa Corner at Jerez, which was a corner that he got involved in a three-way bloody crash with two Ducatis, I seem to remember going back. So sometimes it's inappropriate. And I was always disappointed. You call it a Gardner straight. That for me, I mean, Wayne Gardner, if anything, a straight line is not where he was at his best. Gardner was a scrapper. You needed a corner named after Gardner, not the straight. I mean, you named the straight after some official, some bloke that's handing out the trophies. Not Wayne Gardner. Wayne Gardner deserved a better corner than that, in my view.
What corner would you give him then?
Whoa, that is a bloody good question and fairly inevitable. I should have seen that one coming, shouldn't I? I think a corner, it'd have to be a tough corner. It'd have to be a corner that was that for me that showed Gardner the way. Well, Gardner was a tough kid. He would be rushing up the inside. Having said that, I don't remember Gardner being dirty in any way. Which whenever we're same era, and I don't remember him being dirty. He was quite a hard rider. So you'd have to name something, Southern Loop or something, something along those lines, Siberia. You can't change the name of Siberia because that's really down to the weather and the topography of the place. But I've got to say that I think that I would definitely name a corner rather than a straight after Wayne Gardner. Just my thought. Actually, that can start the debate, can't it, in the comments? Corner names. I remember commentating at a place called Knock Hill up in Scotland here. You will not be familiar with Knock Hill.
No, I've actually been there. I've been there because my partner Richie raced in the BSB. He was in the Stock 1000, and the year they went to Knock Hill, and I remember arriving at the circuit, and one side there's sheep, and then there's the circuit on that side.
Neil Mackenzie had this theory that depending on where the sheep were on the hill, if they were up high, it was going to be sunny. If they were down low, it was going to be raining. It was like a barometer, the sheep barometer. Only a Scot would really know how that works. But anyway, but Knock Hill, you could have rain or shine depending on what it was, and difficult conditions, but you have to work it out. But for me, I went to Knock Hill as a commentator for television once, and they changed the names of the place because they'd got sponsors for different corners. And I remember I got into trouble because I wouldn't call them those names. I'm not going to change the hairpin, Jock Taylor, Taylor's hairpin, Taylor's corner, because Jock Taylor was a mate of mine. He was killed as world champion in a sidecar, and disrespectful to just dump Taylor and call it something else. It's back to where it should be now, by the way, name-wise. So I have great difficulty in naming corners after sponsors. They should be named after very famous drivers or riders. What do you think? In the comments, everybody.
Yeah, in the comments, let us know. But I just love at Phillip Island how it's called the hay shed, because at once upon a time it was a hay shed.
I wonder who crashed through it.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our predictions, because if everybody's going to be in the comments letting us know their names for corners, or who should have a corner named after them, while you think of your prediction, I'm also going to say something that I just remembered. For those of you who use Strava, it's a fitness app, right? My brother uses it. At Phillip Island, there is the main street, and then if you turn right, the beach is right along there, and then the hotel on the corners where a lot of the teams stay. That strip along the front is called Marquez Straight on Strava, and you will always see runners out there trying to beat his running time, which I thought was quite funny. But Keith, on to serious notes, predictions. Come on, who's going to take pole? Who's going to take the win?
That sounded pretty serious to me. I could just imagine a load of people out there now trying to beat Marquez's time up the beach. I love that. I love that. You won't see me there, I can tell you. I expect you to put a time in.
All right. I'll have a go at Marquez straight. We'll give that a whirl.
We'll see what sort of time you're up against, shall we? Okay. Bagnaia. Oh, this is boring. Bagnaia, Jorge Martin. This is the trouble. MotoGP. I've just come back from the weekend at British Superbikes at Brands Hatch. If you've not seen it, if you're watching this, listening to this from around the world, just see if you can find a clip of, just outstanding. I mean, motorbikes without much electronic control, all the things that MotoGP isn't, British Superbikes are, and the racing. Honestly, if I swear, we'll have to put a tab on this podcast, and I don't want to do that because it will limit who can see it. But honestly, it was an unbelievable race again. 1 point separated the two guys going for it, and I think that. For me, I'm so looking forward to MotoGP when they pull back from all this stuff that is holding us up. We're not having great racing at the moment, is where I'm going with this conversation. But Phillip Island should bring us back a bit to something like that, because there are parts of the track that one rider will be quicker and other riders won't be. Set up will suit half the track and not the other half of the track. So quite often you see at Phillip Island, it is a track of two, maybe even three. I was going to say three halves, but that doesn't work, does it? Two halves, and there's three different sectors that might suit different riders, different bikes. So it's a good track from that point of view. You get it set up for one part, and another part might not work, but somebody else might. So it might bring them back together again. But we do need some good racing, and we've not really had great racing in recent times in MotoGP, and that is a worry, because it is fantastic. The rules are fantastic. They've run their distance now. We need to be pulling it back. I see that there was a notification that went out that we're all running in 2026. There's a freeze on motors, so you got to run what you got in 25 in 26 to try and make that transition into the 27 rule changes. I know it's a long way down the road, but everybody's thinking about it so much already, even though we're only in 24. So 25 next year. Any modifications that you want to make to your 26 bike have got to be done in 25. Otherwise, you're running exactly the same. So whoever's going fast at the end of 2025 will be fast in 2026. So the predictions will be easier, I hope. So I'm going to go for Jorge Martin as the double. I'm going to have him sprint and Grand Prix. I just think he's going to be on a major fight back. This is all weather related, and I might as well throw it all in the air. Bagnaia and Marquez. Jack Miller, I'd like to think, will be in the top four, but that doesn't really count for our predictions. So there you go. The mix-up of Bagnaia, Martin, and Marquez is where I'm going with it.
I think I'm going to go Marquez for pole. And I want to say... Well, let me ask you this before I make the decision. We know that Brad Binder's been strong here before. Obviously, Jack as well. How do you think Pedro's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I put the bloody kibosh on him last time out, because I said he was going to have his first win in Japan, and he was on for winning the sprint race, and then he was on for taking the second race as well. If he, of course, I can't make any claim for it. He fell off in both of them. So at the end of the day, but I felt like that was a bit of a commentator's curse, really, with Acosta. I genuinely thought he was going to take a win in Japan, but sadly he didn't. Here, I think he could be in with it. He could be in the mix. I mean, he's got nothing to lose. Martin and Bagnaia, they've also got in the back of their heads a championship, but at some stage, everybody has to throw caution to the wind to win this championship. I mentioned BSB. Those two guys on that very last lap, it was like their life depended on it. It was incredible. And I think that you're going to, as this season rolls on, and we're getting towards the end of it now. How many have we got left? 4.
4.
It's a situation where at some stage, someone's going to have to take the initiative and just go balls out. And I have a feeling that Jorge Martin, what's the difference? 10 points. It's not enough. Every weekend there's 37 on the table. We've got 4 races left. At some stage, somebody's just going to have to go, I ain't even going to think about that championship. I'm just going to go for it. And that brings in the likes of Acosta, who's got no championship hopes at all. Who else is in there? Enea Bastianini snuck in front of Marc Marquez by a couple of points. See, Enea around here could go quite well.
I was just thinking the same with the tyres,
Yeah, and I mean it's a bit of a Yamaha track as well. So who's been going quite well on it? It's one of those racetracks. It's very difficult to predict, which makes Phillip Island that much greater from my point of view. It's just one of those tracks where it's difficult to predict anything, weather, performance, and so on. One thing's for sure, I predict lots of beer being drunk.
Yeah. How about I'll do a spicy prediction? I'm going to do Marquez for pole. I'm going to do Marquez, Bastianini, Pedro. I'm not even going to put Pecco or Jorge on the podium just for a spicy option.
It will mean that our predictions then means that Pedro Acosta is going to win.
There we go. There we go.
Sorry about that if you heard my phone. Yeah.
Before we move on to some other topics and news related, I wanted to ask you, did you hear about the rumor, might even be true, that Ducati aren't going to give Pecco or Jorge any more updates on their bike? They're going to just let them finish out the year. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's speculation to start with. They will say, obviously, that they're not going to do that. But why would they? Why would they give them, extra trick bits as they're coming through? I think we're at the point of the season where probably they're not developing that much more now anyway. I think it's more data that they need. I mean, sharing data at this point might be fruitless for them. I think if they do that, Ducati will cause themselves a PR pain, because all of us will rail against that. If we feel that Ducati are holding back Jorge Martin from winning the title because he's moving on and he's going to take the number one plate with him, then I can't see it personally. I think the relationship, it depends where the relationship's got to between Campionoli and Campionotti, and Ducati, whether the fact that they've gone to Yamaha has created such a team problem. And of course, there becomes a political situation, sharing information with a team that's moving on and giving them an advantage moving into next year would not be a wise move from Ducati either. So they've got a tightrope to walk, I think, Ducati. Supporting Martin is the morally correct thing to do, but from a corporate perspective and a technical perspective, to give him information that Yamaha may be able to use next year through the Pramac team would be unwise, because the margins are so small now. The tiniest piece of information, tiniest piece of data that may assist Yamaha next year will be counterproductive to what Ducati want moving forward. So it's a difficult conundrum, but I don't think we're going to ever really know until the proverbial hits the fan, when we get into the winter time, when people are out of contract and suddenly Jorge Martin and co are turning around and slinging a bit of mud Ducati's way, if that's what they have done. We'll find out later, retrospectively. Actually, while we're on the subject, what is all that BS around Gresini at the moment with that bloody QJ Motor?
That's what I was just going to say. You said proverbial hitting the fan, and I was like, Gresini.
Yeah, it's just, I can't believe it. So this QJ Motor, who were sponsors of Gresini in Moto 2, winner last time out, Manuel Gonzalez, who took his first race win last time, and then QJ Motor have ordered him to be sacked by Gresini because he wore a hachimaki, I think they call it, got a hachimaki, the headband, which I understand where the Chinese are coming from. QJ Motor is a Chinese company. China seems to like to flex its muscles now and again, but for me, they seem like they've chucked their toys out the pram in somewhat of a childish manner with this, because he wore this headband, which clearly is something that aggravates the Chinese, but I think they could have been a little bit more mature about it and seen that there was no intent, maliciousness or insult to the Chinese at all. They could have rapped his knuckles and said, look, you need to get a lesson in history and understand our position in this, and put that out so the world understood it. Like, I think that the problem is here, everybody's going to go, instead of, oh yeah, you need an, oh yeah, I understand now why they might have got the ump over it. But to demand that they, Gresini sack their race-winning rider is very silly. And I just think a knee-jerk reaction to something that in itself was nothing. If you read the history, if you understand the history between China and Japan and what that may mean, then that's a different matter altogether. But that aside, I think that they could have handled it in a much better way. And a company the size of QJ Motor is a big, it's a big outfit. And you would think that they'd got people that would be looking to make the right. They could have had a winning rider, a winning team, and a political point made to everybody in the world of that particular thing. To if they wanted to make a point about an issue going back to World War II, they could have easily have done that, and all of us would have gone, yeah, maybe we won't wear a hatchy matchy or something, or whatever, as a fashion item, as a in sporting terms, it's a winning sort of logo. It's something that people wear. But I mean, of course, if we go back to we quite often see it in World War films or something, where the old guys in the planes are doing the kamikaze business. And I think that's the association as well, which probably is not the one that the Chinese want to promote. I understand it, but I think they've been a bit daft in the way they've handled it, personally.
Do you know what the outcome was? Are they, Gresini and the motor company, still together, or has there been a separation?
The logos have all come off. They're nowhere to be seen on their website or anything now. So QJ Motor are off the bikes, and it's Gresini Racing again. It'd be interesting to see. I can't see a resolution from it, to be honest, because it seems like everybody fired their big guns really early in the argument rather than leave it until a bit later. Normally you fire a few little ones at each other and sort the problem out. But they seem to have, fired big guns at each other very early on in the argument. There is no argument. I mean, from a political point of view, I think history, I mean, how far back do we go with history? We have this in the UK all the time, don't we? Because the UK have been sods somewhere in the world at some time or the other. But that was then a long time ago. Respect must be shown to nationals all over everybody has their point of view on this. But a genuine, non-intentional slight on China was not there. It wasn't a situation where anybody could have foreseen where we are. And my view is that QJ Motor could have made it into much of a positive for China by saying, look, we understand why you wore it, but it's not respectful to us. We don't want to see it again. And official statements would have gone out everywhere, and everybody would have gone, oh yeah, I suppose, in strictly speaking, they have a point, and you form an opinion, and that's it. It brings awareness to people rather than, suddenly there's a big bun fight. We want you to sack the race winner, which is just the most ludicrous request I think I've ever seen or heard in my life, in racing life. So it's a shame, because Gresini will be, no doubt that if QJ Motor haven't paid all their instalments, there'll be a few quid down, which, as you know, in racing nowadays, you can't afford to be that far out. But maybe there'll be some resolution down the road. But I think it could have been handled in a much more positive way.
Well, I think that basically sums up our Australian Grand Prix preview, and I do apologise for everybody listening in the Northern Hemisphere, because now you get to understand what I feel like having to stay up late to watch MotoGP. So welcome to what it's like being down under. But I think we're going to be in for an exciting race, because the weather is definitely going to turn up here. So Keith, thank you as always for joining me. And listeners, if you can't get enough of OMG MotoGP, check out our socials at OMG MotoGP on all of the platforms. Or if you have a question for any of us on the team, you can email us at omgmotogp@gmail.com. But from myself and Keith Hewen, we're going to be back real soon to talk more OMG MotoGP. This Australian Grand Prix episode is brought to you by Australia's House of Power Sports, A1 Accessory Imports, the proud importer and distributor of EK chains. Now, when it comes to the state-of-the-art Japanese-made motorcycle chains, EK chains deliver. The ZVX3 sealed with the advanced NX ring is the strongest chain on the market, with 15% longer life than its predecessors. Perfect for your 1000cc street or track bikes, or any application where strength and durability matter most. Visit ekchains.com.au to find the right EK chain for your motorcycle.